When you see a train out in the wild or on a railroad layout, do you ever wonder where it came from, how it was made up? Welcome to part 2 of my series, Switching Interbay on the Burlington Northern. Today we're going to look at how to make up a train from scratch, assuming that we have a yard such as the one you're seeing here, with some cars that need to be shipped somewhere. We'll briefly discuss the purpose of trains, take a quick look at a map of the area around this Seattle yard, and then we'll get to work making up a train with the right cars, the right engines, and the right caboose. I'm Burr Stewart, and this model railroad yard that you're looking at is my gross approximation of the Burlington Northern's Interbay / Balmer yard set in approximately 1973. The bridge here is the Nickerson Street overpass, which is a great rail fanning spot. You can see the maintenance of way equipment on the right, the engine terminal on the left, the car repair shed on the right, and of course in the distance is the main classification yard and the caboose track, which we'll be using. But before we get down to business, let's just take a look at the map of the area and figure out why we need to make up a train at all. Here's a map of the United States showing all the railroad lines. And zeroing in on the Pacific Northwest, you can see that in the Seattle area, right across from the Olympic Peninsula, there were lines coming from the east and coming from the south and north. James Hill called this the head of the rake. On my layout, I use a simplified schematic drawing like this and rotate it south to north so that you can see right-hand move is south and left-hand move is eastern and northerly. This means in general that any train being made up in Interbay Yard, which is the center of the rake, will either be a northbound, an eastbound, or a southbound. Now, as you may recall from part 1 of this series, we were pushing eastbound cars onto the C track in the yard. So let's go over and look at the car card boxes and see whether we have enough cars to make a credible train heading eastbound. As I look through the car cards in the box for track C, I see that we have quite a few purple eastbound cars that we could put in a train. So the next question is, are there any other cars that should proceed northbound with us to the intersection at the Delta Y? Here on the map, you can see our Balmer yard in the center of the diagram. And you can see that we'll be going to Mukilteo up to Delta and Skykomish with our eastbound train. But we could potentially drop off cars that are headed northbound at the Delta yard in Everett on our way. So let's look at what other cars are in the yard and whether it might make sense to take them with us. Here we can see on track 2 we have some light green and light blue cars which are headed for local destinations in the Northern Route. And look here on track 3 we have 2 cars that are headed to Bellingham and beyond, which are through cars, which we might want to take with us. Now on track 4 is the Sky Local cars, which while they're headed eastbound, they're local, so we wouldn't want to take them on a through train like we're building here. So our perusing the yard basically has led us conclude that we have 2 northbound cars we can drop off at Delta Yard and take the remainder of our eastbound cars on to Wenatchee and beyond. So let's get to work and make up that through train. We got lucky today and the engineer offered us a ride on the front steps of the cab, so we eagerly jumped on the engine. The first thing we're going to do is go get those northbound cars, the gondola and the red boxcar on track 3. Ouch, we hit that a little hard. One of the advantages we have as model railroaders is that we can push two cars together and they couple, and we don't have to connect the air hose and fuss with it like real railroaders do. On this video, you'll notice some discrepancies between the two shots that are simultaneously shown, sometimes for good and sometimes for bad. In this case, we're getting two things for the price of one. I just uncoupled the boxcar there, and then in the main shot, you'll see us stop in order to realign the turnout for the normal position. Good practice, but not always followed. As we pull our two cars out, you'll notice on the right the green BN caboose that we removed from our incoming train in the previous video. The brakeman has lined the switch for the C track, so now we're ready to shove our two cars onto all of our eastbound cars and make up our train. Our next job will be to go pick up a caboose on the caboose track and shove it onto the rear end of our train. Fortunately, this is a double-ended caboose track, so all we have to do to pick up a caboose is go to the correct end of the track, pick the caboose off, and then pull it to the end of the train. You can see on the inset view that there's a nice shiny yellow and green caboose just waiting for us. By 1973, which is the year I'm modeling, the BN had made the cabooses mostly pool cabooses, meaning that we could just grab the next caboose in line and take it. In the old days, cabooses were assigned with the engine crews, and it would be more complicated to fish out the correct caboose to put with the engine that was going to be hauling the train. We can't see very well going backwards like this, so we'll just use the overall view for a minute. We coupled up very carefully so as not to jar a conductor out of their seat. Well, now we've got our nice view back, so we'll head over to the other end of the train and tack our caboose onto the back. That's one nice looking caboose. It looks like it came just fresh out of the paint shop. This is the scale house for weighing cars, but today we're using it for a runaround track because all the other yard tracks are full. We could have also gone down to the main line and run through the main line, but of course that would have created possible traffic congestion. It looks like our engineer knew that guy standing next to the scale house. One of the reasons I made this video is because I wanted to find out how long it really takes to make up a train. It turns out it's about half an hour, which is really a factor when planning for operating sessions. On the right here, you can see some loaded auto racks with Japanese imports that were starting to come in the 1970s at Pier 90 and 91 at the Port of Seattle. I'm going to take a moment to jump down and go to the other end of our locomotive so we get a better view of shoving the caboose on. Using an uncoupling pick isn't always the easiest thing in the world, but it usually works. Well, now our train is complete except for engines. So we'll run this switcher back to where it came from and then head over to the roundhouse. I don't know about you, but I think that is one great looking locomotive. It obviously could be weathered, and of course the engine number should be changed to the BN number, but details. I'm happy to watch it run, and I hope you are too. It's occurring to me now that we've been running through the scale house on the wrong track. So we've probably damaged the weighing equipment with the weight of the locomotive. My. Well, now that we've admired the GP9 for a while, let's take a look at our train and confirm that we're ready to go. Front end, we have some rebar in that gondola car and the CP box car, both to be dropped off in Delta Yard. Then we have the cement hoppers that we dropped off in part 1 of this series. And then we have a bunch of miscellaneous eastbound cars that were already in the yard, including the last car for the Norfolk and Western, obviously needs to head back there. And our pristine, beautiful caboose. So with our diligent yardmaster hat on, let's just take one more look at the car cards and make sure we've got what we think we've got. Yep, there are 2 northbound cars and a bunch of purple cars. Ooh, what's that white car? Eesh, that's a mistake. But people make mistakes, and we're not going to spend time fixing that today. We'll fix it when our train gets to Everett. Now it's time to turn our attention to finding some engines to haul this train to Wenatchee. In the Interbay engine terminal, which we're looking at here, there are a variety of mostly 4-axle diesels, but there's one concept of 2 SD 40-2s and an Alco Century that I think is perfect for an eastbound transcontinental train like this. The problem is that it's on the right-hand side of the terminal, so the only way we can get it out is to head south and then go north on the main line and hook up to the north end of our train. So we've parked in one of the cameras at the Dravis overpass, and now you can see I'm starting up the engines with my NCE throttle. The nitpickers among you will note that the Burlington Northern did not have any 7000 series SD 40-2s in 1973, but we look over that point. These scale trains locomotives are absolutely fabulous runners, and one day we'll get around to relettering them. Uh-oh. I thought running the locomotive down the main would be a simple thing, but if you look in the distance, you can see the train ship approaching with 2 GN Sky Blue F units. The train ship was a special reefer block that ran from Seattle yards up to Vancouver, British Columbia, to meet a ship that would carry the reefers up to Alaska. And this happened twice a week. And we happened to luck out today. If there was some other way to get our engines to the front of our train, we would use it. But the only way in the Interbay's Balmer Yard for an engine to come out of the south end of the engine facility is to come out on the main line. So I guess we'll just have to wait it out. This might be a good time to talk about the different types of trains. The train that we've been building today is called the through train, which means it goes from one large city to another. Then there are local trains, which go shorter distances and do a lot more switching. There are unit trains, which take only one type of car, such as a coal train or a grain train, not to mention this prime example here of the train ship that's just passing below us. And then there are other sorts, such as maintenance of way trains and other company business that is non-revenue. Which trains are supposed to be run at a given time is the subject of the operating plan, called the OP or OP. And each train is described by a train brief. On my railroad, I've simplified the 2-page train briefs down into a small card. And I'll show you the card for our through train that we just made up, train 88, in a few minutes. Now that the train ship has passed, it looks like it's safe for us to go out and take the main line and run around to the head of our train. Here's a question for you. Would the prototype locomotive crew bother to climb down from the rear engine, turn off the headlight there, walk all the way up to the front engine, and start it up, when all they're doing is shunting the locomotive over to the train? I don't think so. I mean, it would be easy to do with my NCE system, but I thought that getting out on the main line like this, they would just expedite the move. Let me know what you think. In the real world, I should be stopping the locomotive so the brakeman can get out and flip the turnouts as needed for us to make our way through this maze of switches. But in a model railroad, we tend to skip this, just in the interest of time. Why we feel we're in a hurry is not clear, but there it is. You gotta love the sound of those whining SD40-2s. Here's something realistic. I shoved the locomotives onto our train, but the couplers didn't match, so I had to reach in with a pick and straighten them out. That's similar to what an actual brakeman would have had to do. So now we're coupled up, and the air hose is connected, and the locomotives can pump up the air pressure in the train and get ready to depart. But we have a lot of paperwork to do. First, we're going to check our car cards and make sure that they're still the ones we thought. Put them in a clip so we keep them together for our trip. And then we'll go over to the locomotive card and get the cards for our locomotives. Make sure we have the proper consist cards. And as you can see here, we have our 3 locomotives set up in order with the DCC settings for the operator. And we attach that to the front of the car card. Then following that, we go over and get our caboose card and put it at the back. The whole thing fits into a neat little package. Like I said, here's the caboose card, which is red on the edge, and that goes in the package as well. And we can stick it in our pocket. Now all that's left is we need a clearance and our train instructions. So this little card is my version of a train brief. It explains where the train is supposed to go. And the track warrant, as you can see, says that we're cleared from Balmer to Mukilteo, which is the first town along the line. So with our paperwork, we're ready to go, and now we can move the engine and train out on the road. But uh-oh, do you see what I see? And in the distance there, the Pacific Zip is approaching. The Pacific Zip was the Burlington Northern's first attempt to try to improve its handling of intermodal cargoes. And it started out as a pretty short train in the early days, but it was a very fast train, and so it gradually built up the intermodal business, which is now very big on railroads today. It also handled some express freight in boxcars at the end, and it would move through Interbay without stopping, and it would be handled in the Stacy Street yard south of downtown Seattle. Now that it's passed, we're spooling up and we're going to head out of town. Oops, I had a switch thrown against me. Thank goodness for DCC circuit breakers. You'll notice that the passing Pacific Zip didn't even stop during that little incident. That's because I have circuit breakers protecting both the main line and the yard tracks separately. Well, there you have it. We made up a train, got clearance to go, and it's headed out of town. So to recap what we've done here, in order to make up a train, you first need to know the purpose of your train, which is usually part of a operating plan. And a train usually has some sort of a train brief which explains in detail which cars or blocks of cars should be on that train. Then you find the cars that need to go on the train in the yard. Then you switch the cars from their tracks in the yard to some sort of a departure track, such as we had on the C track in Interbay. Then you put a caboose on the back, find some engines appropriate to the mission, and put them on the front, do a brake test, get your paperwork all set, and head out of town. Now as our train heads north across the Ballard Bridge, otherwise known as Bridge number 4. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and be sure to check out both the first version, part 1, where we broke down an incoming train, and stay tuned for part 3, where we'll take this train that's leaving town and switch those 2 northbound cars out of it in Everett. In the meantime, don't hesitate to subscribe to this channel, and thank you very much for joining me.